Welcome to Not Your Ordinary Parts podcast, a podcast where we talk about hard things associated with the human experience with the goal of increasing awareness, growth, and healing. You may hear information from professional licensed therapists, life coaches, healers, doctors, etc. This information is not medical advice or therapy and is not meant to replace actual therapy or instructions given to you by a doctor or personal therapist. I'm your host, Jelon Johnson. I'm not a therapist. I have no background in psychology. I'm literally no one special. I decided one day that I wanted more and I wanted to heal the things that I was hiding. And I started my journey. So what you're seeing now is the byproducts of that. And I hope that it's helpful to anyone who is interested. My guest today is Tess Teater. Tess is a transformational coach who uses breathwork to integrate mind, body, and spirit. Her coaching practices focus on self-awareness, inner child work, shadow work, and reparenting, which helps release and integrate unresolved trauma and emotion. So, Tess, welcome. Thank you for being my guest.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
I followed your work on IG for a good minute now, and you have a lot of amazing content, and you really bring a lot of awareness to what healing and what the body and what breath work can do. So thank you for doing that, and also thank you for being here again.
Thank you. Thanks for reading it, and your posts are great too.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
So
Thank you. So we've had the opportunity to get acquainted and get to know each other a bit, but just so that everyone else can know who you are and what your background is, would you mind just starting off by giving us a little bit of info about you?
Yes. So my name's Tess. I live outside of Syracuse, New York, and I think my journey started because I've dealt with mental health issues for most of my life, especially anxiety and panic. And I tried everything. I tried therapy, I tried medication, I tried supplements, I tried yoga, I tried pretty much everything. And it just wasn't working. Temporarily I'd feel better, but it was not solving the issue. And something inside of me knew there must be more. And then I found breath work. And in the first session, it was life-changing to me because I realized that I wasn't actually connected enough to my body to be processing emotion. So I was talking about my feelings, about things that had happened to me, but I wasn't actually feeling them because I wasn't connected enough. And that's one of the main coping mechanisms we all have from the time we're children, is that when we're confronted with something traumatic or painful, we learn to leave our body and disconnect from that pain and that part of ourselves because it's just too much to bear. And then over time, that becomes habitual to the point where we are completely living in our heads on autopilot and not present in our body. So when I discovered breathwork, the first time I did it, I was like, wow. And I knew there's a part of me that just knew this is what I'm meant to do. And I'm meant to help bring this to other people. Because I think that is the missing piece in the mental health crisis, is the mind-body connection. And the breath is like a catalyst between your mind and body. So that's how I got into this. And I kind of created my own thing, combining everything that made or helped me heal. And I'm not healed or never fully healed, but everything I use in my healing journey and have used, I kind of combined into my own amalgamation of things, and I call it transformational coaching. So
Wow.
That's a little bit about me and how I got here.
Now, when we were talking a few days ago, you had told me a little bit about, I guess, kind of your journey and when you were younger, and some of the things that I guess would help your clients relate to you. And I know I related a little bit too, and it made me feel it's easier to, when you relate to someone, it's easier to listen to what they're saying, especially if you can see that the work that they're doing is being is beneficial. So I think you said that you were a bartender, or
Yeah.
what was it?
Yeah. We were talking about how I was always lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And I went to college, like in and out of classes and changing my major for like 8 years. And I got, I eventually got a degree in history. I worked for the TSA, like giving people pat downs at the airport. And I worked for a call center. And I went back to school and had a degree in occupational therapy, but I've also been a bartender. I worked at Burger King. So like I've done so many different jobs. Like I just would always be changing, but I don't regret any of them because I learned something in every single one of them that has made me a better like healer and coach for other people, because I can relate to people. And like, I'd have to say bartending is probably one of the jobs where I learned the most, more than I probably learned in college, to be honest, because you learn about people, how to relate to people. Same thing with waitressing, multitasking, like there's some really good skills there. So yeah, I have done a lot of different things, and it wasn't until I found this that I found my purpose. And now, I'm super driven and passionate. Like I had never wanted to go to work, or I just felt like, it was an means to an end. Like I have to make money, so I have to go. But now it's like, I want to, and like, it's one of the best parts of my day every day. So,
Wow, that's great. And so now you are, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and I like to help other people find that in themselves, because I think we all have a special purpose,
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So now you are a transformational coach.
Yeah.
What exactly is that?
I kind of just made up the name, but to me, I want to transform people's lives. And I use the breath work to help them reconnect to their body, to locate emotion and trauma that has been left unresolved, help them process that, learn how to stay present in their bodies, connect to their innate wisdom, their intuition. But then also I do things like ego work, recognizing your mind, how you're talking to yourself in there. That's a lot of the reparenting piece, inner child work. And I kind of just use all these things to help change people's lives. I also really like to give people homework, like journaling, meditation. Those things are important too, to help you recognize the patterns of your mind and how it affects you, because our mind can keep us in emotion or prevent us from feeling emotion. So I really love journaling in that you can kind of just write down all your thoughts and then look at them and see, oh, wow, like, no wonder I'm unhappy. Like, this is how I'm talking to myself in my head. Or I like to have people at the end of the day just write down, what do you want to let go of from the day? Like, what thoughts are ruminating in your head? And you can see that there's always an emotion behind them or a wound. So for me, when I started doing that, it was always not enough. Like it would be like, I didn't run far enough. I didn't exercise enough. I didn't play with my daughter enough. I didn't eat healthy enough. And so right there is one of my deepest wounds. I'm not enough. So then I could recognize when my mind was playing these not enoughs and challenge them and be like, no, I am enough. It's like creating an affirmation from that, helping people become their own cheerleader, because the truth is nothing outside of us is guaranteed. Anyone could leave our life at any time. Something could happen to them. Our house could burn down. Terrible things can happen outside of us. So that's why it's so important to create a safe and loving environment within yourself, so that no matter where you go, you can feel at home. You have a home within you.
Wow. So
I guess that's what I do in a nutshell.
Good. And as part of your coaching, one of the things that is your main focus is breath work. So could you elaborate a little bit more about what breath work is?
Yes. So breath work helps us get out of our mind and into our body, helps us reconnect to our body. Like I said, we all have a tendency when confronted with trauma or big emotion to disconnect and go into our heads. So the breath helps us safely reconnect so that we can start to process things that have been left unresolved, start to fully feel our emotions. And I do two different types of breath work. One is called Somato Respiratory Integration, SRI, and that's a more targeted approach to breath work to locate like specifically where in the body, along your central nervous system that you're holding on to trauma. And then I do transformational breath work, which is done usually in a group setting. And that's done all in and out through your mouth. That type of breath helps to activate, like the fight or flight response. That's the breath we use if a tiger was to run up on us. We would start to breathe in and out through our mouth. And parts of the brain shut down so that all your awareness and energy can be brought into your body. And so that's the purpose of that breath work, is get you out of your head and really, really present in your body. And I think that the breath work is so important because there are things that we're holding on to, traumatic events that we aren't even conscious of. And they're affecting the decisions we make. Your body remembers everything. And a lot of the traumatic events that happen when we're little, we dissociated from. That's a protective mechanism that the mind and body uses, is we are going to make you forget this. But your body remembers. And you are navigating life in avoidance of ever having to feel that same pain again. So you're going to avoid doing certain things so you don't reactivate those wounds. But at the same time, avoiding those things might be stopping you from growing, trying new things. So I think that's the importance of breath work. And another thing is that there's also generational trauma that we're holding on to. There's this study that was done with like lab rats, and they sprayed them with cherry oil scent and shocked them in the foot. And then I think it was 14 generations of rats after that would have a trauma response when they smelled that. So we are holding on to trauma that we aren't even conscious of, and it's affecting us. So the breath is a way to also release that.
Wow. Trauma is a big subject, it seems, nowadays. And with your clients, do you find that a lot of the trauma is early trauma, like childhood trauma?
Yes. I mean, what happens between the ages of 0 to 10 sets the patterns and the foundation for the rest of our lives. So if you have something going on now in your life, it's not actually like about what's going on now. It's about getting to the root of it. Where did this pattern begin? And it's all of the ages of 0 to 10. And there was this other study where there was like 100 combat veterans, and they all experienced the same type of situation when they were at war. 20 of them came out with PTSD. And that was because those 20 had childhood trauma. So we hold on to whatever happened then, and it's repeated in our lives until we resolve it, until we confront it. So yeah, it's the majority of it is getting to the root of it, which I don't remember if I said that when I was talking about what my experience was, but I think a major reason that talk therapy and everything else wasn't working for me is because I was just talking about what was going on now, or maybe a few things I had remembered, but it didn't get to the root of it, which is always childhood.
Wow.
Yeah.
The study about the PTSD and connecting the soldiers who got it with the childhood trauma. I mean, if that doesn't show just how definitive that having early childhood traumatic events can be in your life for the rest of your life, I don't know what will.
Yeah. I think there's a similar study with the people in the Holocaust. Actually, how do you say his name? Is it Gabor Mate, the
Oh,
doctor?
I don't know if anybody knows.
Right.
I've been saying it wrong.
So it was similar with victims of the Holocaust, where
Hmm.
ones that had experienced childhood trauma had more difficulty, like recovering from what they had experienced, than the ones who didn't. So it's
Wow.
so important.
Now, another thing you do is shadow work. How does that work with the breath work and everything else that you do? Or what is it?
So shadow work, our shadow is are the parts of us that we don't want to look at, the things we have shame for, our darkness, the things that we never want to tell anyone or hide. And it
Mm.
relates to breath work in that when we are breathing, some of that, the trauma we've shoved down that's part of our shadow, traumatic things that have happened to us that we feel shame for, because even if something happened that wasn't our fault, we have shame around it. So the breath work sometimes brings that up, and it's a safe place to release it. And in SRI, Somato Respiratory Integration, it's also coupled with affirmations, where it's not just about releasing the emotion that took place during the event, it's also giving words to whatever feeling was shame, suppressed, ignored, or denied at the time. So saying things, like I feel scared, I feel sad, or, sometimes even people say, like, I feel like I want to die, because how many times in our life did we feel that? Like there's so much shame around saying that. But I think that that's what causes people to stay in that feeling, is that not only do I feel, I'm going through a really hard time, I feel like I want to die, but also I can't say that out loud because I'll get shamed for it. So I'm going to hold it
Mm.
in. So the shadow is all about, shame, or also the parts of ourselves that we kind of don't see or don't want to see. We all have our blind spots or our shortcomings or our flaws. So it's all about learning those and embracing them. Um, and it's a lifelong process. But I always feel like the shadow is synonymous with shame. So whatever we're holding shame around.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. Now, another thing you do is reparenting. Is
Mhm.
that something that's right in line with the breath work and the shadow work as well? And what does it exactly mean to reparent so people have an understanding?
So we all have like our inner child, right? And our inner child speaks with us through emotion. So say we had something traumatic happen, or for example, we were a child and we tried out for the team and we didn't make it.
Mm.
We never fully processed that. So it creates this wound of like, I'm not good enough. Every time you go to try something new again, your ego is going to spin that story and tell you, you're not good enough. Don't do that. What if that happens again? So it's going to prevent you from trying anything new. So reparenting is really about challenging that voice and noticing that when that voice comes up, that's a protective mechanism. It's just trying to protect you. And it's about witnessing it for what it is and getting to the emotion underneath, comforting that inner child that felt, I'm not good enough. And saying all the things to yourself that you would say to a small child who experienced the same thing. Like I said, being your own best cheerleader, being so loving and compassionate to yourself, saying things like, it's going to be okay. It's okay to be scared, but I'm right here with you.
Mm.
It's about like just witnessing and holding that inner child and giving your inner child the uh, love and comfort that maybe you didn't have at that time.
I've heard reparenting described as the things you would say to a child that was maybe crying or hurt themselves or needed to be consoled. In
Mm-hmm.
that moment when you're feeling anxious or what have you, saying those exact same things to you. Would you agree that that's kind of what it is?
Yes, definitely. Um, you nailed it. Just speaking to yourself as if you were a child that needs consoling and comfort. Um, and knowing that when emotion comes up, that's how your inner child communicates with you. So comforting those emotions instead of shaming or pushing them away, because we're so conditioned to back away from emotion, like uncomfortable emotions. I don't want to feel that, but it's about giving the child permission to feel it, coaching them through it.
So the uncomfortable emotions and the unresolved trauma over an extended period of time, how does that affect the body?
Over time, it can cause physical ailments, but also complete disconnection from the body. That's what autopilot is like you're so disconnected from your body, you're just living up here in your head, completely repeating patterns, making decisions based on your nervous system programming and not conscious choices. So you kind of feel stuck. And SRI, the breath work I do, Somato Respiratory Integration, actually was based on network spinal analysis, which chiropractors do it. And it's looking at where along the spine you're not bringing the breath. And that's a place where you're holding on to trauma. So you're not breathing there because you're holding on to something. And so that's another way that trauma can affect your breathing. Ideally, we're breathing into our whole trunk, but the majority of us aren't because we're holding on to something there. So this kind of locates where. And believe it or not, through doing this work with people, I've witnessed people heal from a lot of different physical ailments, especially, gut or gut issues. Obviously things like mental illness, what we're calling mental illness, like anxiety, depression, it helps with all of that, but also back pain. We hold things in our body. And you're definitely able to witness it with the breath. How there's places on the body, along the spine where people just have such difficulty breathing. And once you can bring the breath there, some kind of emotion or trauma is released. Really opens them up. So
are you familiar with the book The Body Keeps the Score?
Yeah.
It goes into detail about how for me, it kind of hit home for me because I have always had digestive issues since I was very, very young. And when I was 3 years old, my parents got divorced. And, I didn't really think that it affected me too much, but I do remember going back and forth from parent to parent and how difficult it was. I would cry like, nobody's business. And then as I started researching what issues I was having with my digestion and so on and so forth, I got to the point to where I realized that my gallbladder was no longer functioning and I had to have my gallbladder removed. And then in the book, The Body Keeps the Score, one of the things that will make the gallbladder go south is separation anxiety. And when I put two and two together, I was like, wow, this mind body connection is so true and so serious. So you working with your clients and helping them heal and releasing that trauma and releasing those stuck emotions, I'm sure that they can and will see some improvement in their physical health.
Right. And there's such a stigma around, being any emotion other than happy. But if you're not releasing your emotions, they're going to manifest in other ways. It's would you rather cry and get it out, or do you want it to come up as some, gut issue or intestinal issue? You know what I mean? It's going to manifest in some way. Emotion is energy in motion. It's meant to move through you. If it's not moving, it's going to create tension. And over time, I always say it's going to manifest as disease, disorder, dysregulation, dysfunction. You don't get to pick which one. So,
wow. You can either pick to process it or I guess pick to, suffer.
Express or repress. And if you're going to repress, it's going to wreak havoc on your body. And I like to tell people, there aren't negative and positive emotions. Like, let that go. It's usually the story around the emotion too that makes it hard for us to want to feel it. Like, you know what I mean? This is bad, or this is never going to end. Our mind starts to spin this story, and that's the purpose of the mind, you know, try to protect you from having to feel these uncomfortable emotions. But if you start to really try to think of them as just something that wants to move through you, it's not good or bad. It's communication. What is this emotion telling me?
Yeah, I saw something that said that feelings are signals, but
Mm-hmm.
we get so conditioned to ignore our feelings or to suppress them that we don't get the message
Right.
from whatever, you know, emotion is trying to communicate with us. We don't listen.
Exactly. So our body is constantly sending us messages, trying to communicate with us, but most of us aren't connected enough to hear it. Intuition is not a gift, it's a skill. We are all intuitive, but we've never been taught how to listen. You know, we're taught to just use logic and reasoning and be analytical and ignore that innate wisdom of the body. So I've just witnessed with almost everyone I work with over time, you know, their intuition increases and they trust themselves so much more because they're connected to their body and they can hear that innate wisdom.
Well,
I always say the mind thinks, the body knows, because your mind is kind of just your wiring, your programming, but the body, that's unfiltered wisdom.
it almost sounds like what you're doing is, you know, of course, helping people with anxiety and things of that nature, but it almost is a rewiring of the nervous system.
Yeah, that's what I call it a lot, or like a nervous system cleanse. But yeah,
Mm,
it is.
mm,
So it's kind of like reconnecting to those lost parts of yourself, reconnecting to the shadow, those parts you pushed away because they were shameful or too painful, embracing them. And then I help coach people to then go out and make more conscious choices in your life. So, um, you know, we can bring up the trauma and bring it to the light of consciousness, but only you can go out and change your life. So I help people with that too, where it's like all your power comes in the pause, your ability to
mm.
pause and make a conscious choice before your nervous system makes one for you,
Wow.
because you're programmed to just continue to make the same decisions. So it's helping people recognize that you know, let me pause and think about how I want to react or respond. And like,
So,
it's
oh,
difficult
go ahead. I'm
at
sorry.
first. Well,
Hmm.
I was just going to say it's hard at first when you've been conditioned. Many of us have been conditioned to self-abandon. Like we people please, do what everyone else
Hmm.
wants us to do. So the first time you go out there and create a boundary or say no to something, or it's going to feel very, very, very uncomfortable. And guilt, that's a normal nervous system response to that. You know, our nervous system's programmed to keep us in the confines of the comfort zone, what we're familiar with. But what if what we're familiar with is self-abandonment or abuse? It's not what's best for us. Stepping outside of it is going to be difficult. So it's not going to happen quickly. Every time you do it though, it gets easier. It's like building a muscle you've never used before. Every time you create a boundary, say no to something that is out of alignment with you, it gets easier and easier until you create these new neural pathways where that becomes a new habit for you. Honoring yourself.
Wow. Um, this was amazing. Your knowledge and the information you shared really was just so good. If someone wanted to see you on social media or find out more about you, where could they find you? Like online or on social media?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. I post something every day, whether it's a video or just some insight. I meditate, and like whatever comes to me, I just put out there in the world for people to hear. Um, and my name is Tess Teater _ Breathwork.
Okay.
And then it's the same thing on Facebook. But you're also welcome to contact me if you have any questions. And I work with people in person or virtually. Um, so I'm here for you if you need me.
Thank you so much. I mean, this has been a really, really great interview, and I'm so glad that you agreed to do this with me. And I hope that so many people are able to watch this and to really get an understanding of how the body works and how the things that you do can be so helpful. So thank you, Tess, for being a guest with me. And I appreciate who you are and what you do.
You're so welcome. Let's do it again soon.